start the show, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Beef, the Beefmaster Education Endowment Fund. Thank you for everything you do for the cattle industry, this breed, and us. Thank you for supporting us. SEBA, the Southeastern Beefmaster Breeders Association. Thank you for all you're doing, especially for the Southeast, and look out for their sale every August in convention. Emmons Beefmasters, Mr. Steve and Miss Cindy needs no introduction. Thank you for what you do for the breed, and thank you for supporting us. C&M Ranches out of Kershaw, South Carolina, the Chick family. Thank you for what you all do for us. It means a lot. Lissy's Beefmasters down in Texas. Thank you to them for supporting the show. And look out for their sales, multiple sales a year, plus some frozen genetic sales. Cottage Farms Beefmasters. Thank you for supporting us, and thank you for what you do for the breed as well. Been in it 50 years, and that's saying something. Sea Shepherd Beefmasters down in Texas, thank you for supporting us. Jones Beefmasters over in Savannah, Tennessee, Mr. Clark Jones, look out for his sale every June. Has great cattle and breeds, just great stuff. Valor Cattle Company out of Georgia, thank you for supporting us, and we couldn't do it without any of you, and we really appreciate it. Welcome to Beefmaster Banner. We're your hosts, Josh Morrison and Jared Strickland. How's it going, Jared?
Man, it's going good. It's been getting a little rain today, so first rain we've had in a little while. So nice to see that.
We had a storm pop up the other night. We were actually out at Red River Bull Sale, and on our flight home, it was raining here a little bit. So hopefully, wasn't enough. It's still dusty. We need more, but I guess we'll take what we get.
Well, it's always nice to get a little bit of rain, which is. I was noticing. I looked at the drought map today, and man, it is rampant. I think it looked like about my best guesstimate, like about 80% of the country is in drought.
You know, it seems like this time of year, every year for us gets dry. I don't know what it is about this kind of. I don't know if it's just the seasons changing or what, but I would figure you get more rain, but it seems to always get dry this time of year.
Well, for us, it seems like you said, it's dry. You're always worried about, getting your fall crops put in as far as that goes. And you're always waiting on rain or something like that. And then as soon as it frosts or whatever, then it stays wet and muddy and all that. But so far, we've actually had a pretty warm fall. So the grass has still been growing what's left of it as far as, man, needed some moisture. So maybe we'll get a couple more weeks out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Little rain.
Yeah, absolutely. We got 2 frosts back to back, probably 2 weeks ago now. And it was, well, yeah, I guess it's been 2 weeks. And I really thought that would kill all that fescue and all that grass off, but it's still hanging strong. And I know it starts losing some nutritional value, which is what we're going to talk about in a little while. But man, it's still hanging in there. That fescue's tough.
Oh yeah, it's a good, especially for us in the Southeast. It's a really good fall, spring grass that's hardy, and the cows really like it and do well on it.
And full disclosure tonight, folks, we're kind of winging it. It's been a very chaotic October and a real chaotic last week for both of us. So we're kind of winging it tonight. We were supposed to have Dr. Bauer on tonight, and his computer crashed to continue our series, and so we had to do some last minute podcast things. That's right. Yeah. So it's all winged tonight.
Well, the way the week has been going, that probably should have expected it.
Yeah, yours started out with a bang.
Well, this time last week, I was gearing up to go to Red River to meet y'all down there, and Thursday night, when I hooked up to the trailer, I realized I had a flat tire. So I had planned on leaving early and didn't quite get to leave early. Had to wait for the tire shop to open up. So I got that fixed. And about an hour and a half later down the road, my truck blowed up on me. So needless to say, I didn't make it to Red River. And then It's been a wild week. I had the kids have had the stomach virus, so you know how that is. And I was in a little accident yesterday. I fell off the. I don't know if I want to embarrass myself, but
Just go ahead. It's fine. Go ahead.
I fell off the side of the trailer trying to catch the cut gate, and it was up against the post, open, letting some cattle out into the field or whatever. And I lost my footing, and when I fell, my right foot got hung in the top of the fence, so I was hanging there with my foot in the fence, and luckily Dad was there with me to get me out of it because I was in some pretty bad pain. I don't know, it was a scary moment. I'll just be honest with you.
You were in a pickle for sure.
Yeah, I was. It felt like my foot was getting cut off. But anyway, so I've got a pretty big bruised up leg and swelled up bad, and I'm getting around a little bit better today. But I learned it. I learned a lesson. Always, when you're doing stuff, be careful, take your time, and also always have your phone with you or something like that, especially if you're by yourself. Because the situation I was in, if I didn't have somebody there, because I know after thinking about it all night, you know, my phone was in the truck. If I'd have been by myself, I'd have been in a mess because I was just hanging there with my foot caught and in a tremendous amount of pain. And just luckily, Dad was there to get me out of it because I might not ended so well.
No, I'd say not. Mine just, yeah, it's a good thing he was there. But you're right. Keep your phone on you. I broke your golden rule today. I didn't even think about it. I got home from work and we just had a calf. We're kind of winding down our calving season, and I went down there to tag a calf, which the cow's normally pretty. I mean, that one especially, she'll let you rub all over her, but you never know about a mama. When you know that all too well.
Yeah.
And I got back up to the house and my wife said, "That is not smart." I said, "What's that?" She should even take your phone with you. I said, "No, I thought about that about the time I come back up through there."
Yeah, that's kind of one of my things. When I had my run in with a cow one time, got run over and tagging a calf and doing all that stuff. Good thing Dad was there at that moment too, because I don't think she was going to let up. So, so it's always good to have a partner out there with you. I know a lot of times we always do stuff by ourselves a lot, but yeah, having that phone handy, especially if you're by yourself, uh, I think I'll do a double take next time I'm doing stuff like that. When it
Well,
comes,
for sure. Well, and I try to keep, if I go down there by myself, I normally keep our utility vehicle. I'll pull it up right up close. That way, if I do have to, I can jump in there where they at least can't. Now they might roll that thing over on top of me, but they can't get me.
you got a fighting chance anyway.
That's exactly right. They still can't get me. I got a cage around me.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's good. It's just relatable, folks. I'm sure everybody has those weeks, and it's just part of it. And we're just gonna have to all laugh about it. That's all I know to say.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is, you know, you look back at it. That's what me and Dad talk about. After yesterday, you look back at it. You look at the things that went bad, but you look at the things that go good too. So
That's right.
you got to always remember that when you're in the cattle business, you got to think that way because there's always something bad around the corner sometimes.
Well, and we're recording this at, just so everybody knows, at 10:22 Eastern time on a Thursday night, and the podcast comes out at 1 a.m. on tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we're
So
cutting under the wire on that.
we're relatable,
But
folks. Don't worry, we get it. Life happens, but the show really does go on.
that's right. You know, we're making it work.
Oh yeah, no, it's enjoyable. We're kind of coming down to the last. This is be this episode and one left. We're hoping to. I'll just tell you, we're hoping to finish out our um EPD series with Dr. Bauer on the last episode of the year, and then as always, we take our December and be with our families and kind of refresh for the new year. So, um, it's been fun this year. It's been a little different than the 2 years prior. But the podcast has grown tremendously. I feel like over the last year, and look forward to seeing what it's going to do. But tonight, we're not done. I promise. Tonight, we're going to talk about winter preparations. That we thought that would be a good topic because we are getting in, to the thick of fall here. Even though it is warm, winter's coming, and what better time to get ready for winter than right now?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said the cowman's he's always getting ready for winter, even while winter's still going on or about the end. In the spring, you're always late winter, early spring. You're trying to do fertilize and get your hay going, and you're still feeding hay probably, and trying to get ready for the next winter. So you're always prepping for winter. But when we were discussing a topic, to kind of make up for kind of a curveball here at the last minute, thought, well, that's what we've been doing all week. Like kind of when I had my accident, we was moving cattle to another pasture for where they're going to stay for the winter and all that. So there's a lot of things you need to do to get ready because obviously start this weekend, everybody just loves daylight savings times, I'm sure. So when it at the ends, it gets for us, I probably speak for a lot of folks, I get off work at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, so it's gonna be dark here where we live. So, I don't get to see the cattle much during the week, so it's kind of good to go ahead and have everything kind of ready to go as this time comes. So that's kind of what we're trying to do is get set up to where we won't be able to make it by there, but maybe a couple times during the week. So at the main farms, and so trying to get everything going. So that's kind of what we wanted to discuss tonight. Some things to think about as this time's upon us. We probably already need to be doing it, but I figure most people in the country is kind of gearing up for hay feeding season. That's coming quick here, and I'm sure even in the drought areas, it's coming quicker than what most people want. But I always say, make sure you got plenty of hay that you think you can make it through the winter. If you don't have enough, be trying to line up somebody to get some, because when you get into the thick of the hay feeding season, especially towards the end of it, hay sometimes does get super scarce. So the last thing you want to do is be having to sell cows that you don't want to sell just because you don't have nothing to feed them. So
it's extremely hard to find too.
Yeah, it just gets hard to find, and it gets expensive, and it can be a budget buster too when you do run short and need to try to find some at the last minute. So that's something that's kind of one of my main things is kind of get a hay inventory, see what you got, kind of see how your fall is looking. I mean, if you've got grass stockpiled, you may not need as much hay, so you can put that in calculation. Kind of like we were talking about a while ago, most of the country's in drought, so most people's stockpile is probably on their grass in the field may not going to be very good. So that take that as a general thought. Hay could be short because there's a lot of people might be needing hay, extra hay, and stuff like that. So kind of do your thinking about that, and then also knowing how good of the quality of the hay you have. Here's the extension agent coming out at me, but it's probably a good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea to test your hay. Make sure you got what your protein content is, energy content. That way you can kind of devise a plan for how much supplementation you need. Hopefully you got really good hay and you don't need much supplementation. But if you do, need that, you can go ahead and make a plan, see how it works for your budget, find the best source close to you that's economical, but also covers that, whether that be some type of feed tub or something like that to get you by. And especially if you got fall calving cows, that's nutrition requirements going to be higher, obviously. And then speaking of calving, I mean, we're mostly finishing that up for the fall. So, but it's time to breed those cows back. So for winter time, make sure you're getting your bulls checked. That way you don't have a surprise. And then you know, obviously we've had a big run of bull sales over the last few weeks. So make sure if you got enough bull power for the cows you got. So that's something to be thinking about too for the winter. You
Yeah, I'm
know,
with you.
I
I,
mean that,
I agree.
that's that's a that's important. You know, you don't want to be running last minute looking for a bull first part of December when the bull sales are all over with and it's harder to find one. You know, possibly,
Absolutely.
or you get stuck with one you really don't want. You know, uh, so typically, you know, we've always done bull checks. You know, right before we turn them out, which is easy to do because that way you can turn them right out after you get back from the bed or whatever. But sometimes it may be better to do it early. That way you can prepare in case you do have a surprise.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Well, and a couple things I'll kind of piggyback off of, and some of what you said there is, just in our operation, we used to, we would be just starting to calve really, um, a few years ago, kind of now, and this past year we decided to back it up, and it is a little hotter in August, September, but I feel like getting them going. Yeah, you've got to deal with some naval issues, sometimes with that, with the heat and the flies and everything, and other things that come with that, and when it's hot. But I think getting them out, getting them going, that way they're up and going. If you creep feed, they're already eating creep feed by the time the real cold weather hits. They're truthfully, I've seen a couple, 2-month-old calves now. If they really are not, they've got trying to figure out how to eat hay. They're kind of starting to want to figure that stuff out. And I feel like it's a lot easier on the cows and the calves if you've already got them going before it gets cold. Um, just that's just my opinion, and everybody I'm sure has got their own way of doing it, but that works for us. Um, they breed back. They seem to breed back easier after they've calved, and it still be. We're gonna AI tomorrow. Get our AI done and put the bull in. And I just think I think they breed back a little better. I know they do here around our place. Before it's just bone chilling cold, and they can, already be still raising that calf, but that calf's big enough that they're starting to kind of figure it out too, and they kind of go do their own thing. They're not having to nurse all day, every day like they do when they're first born. Um, yeah, it just works for us, and I think the second thing, and if maybe you could tell us this, but going back to the extension thing, what maybe tell people how to test their hay if they don't know.
there's a couple ways to do that. The best way, I mean, you can do a crab sample. Uh, it's not as accurate. I'd rather you need to use like a sample probe that it drills into the side of the bell across the windrows, you know, as you roll it up. That gives you the most accurate sample. You probably need to do separated into different cuts, you know, a first cut, second cut, third cut. If you end up doing that, that way it's because there's going to be a difference in that too. So that way you know, and it, you know, that kind of it gives you a way to prepare to feed that hay. Let's say if you've got two separate cuts of hay, one's 8 or 9% protein and one's 11% with high energy. Well, you just happen to, in kind of our situation, what we try to use it for is we have a fall herd and a spring herd. Well, the fall cows get the better hay, and the spring cows get the least, or the hay that's not as good because they don't necessarily. I mean, we don't want to give them bad hay. Don't take it like that, but you utilize the resource that you have because a dry cow could typically take a lower protein energy content than say a cow that's milking, you know. So that's a one way to do that uh, as far as prepping, but definitely get with your local agent in your area. So if you want to test hay, if you've never tested your hay before, it's kind of eye opening. One thing I like to kind of going into something else I want to talk about, prepping for spring and making hay. I mean, I like to use the hay sample as an idea to figure out how much fertilizer is tied up in the hay because it come off the field. If you know what your hay bales weigh, let's say if you got 1,000-pound bale and there's a certain percentage that's P and a certain percentage that's K, your phosphorus and potassium, you really kind of have an idea how much fertilizer you took off that field. Let's say if you made 4 bales to the acre and they weigh 1,000 pounds apiece, you took out 4,000 pounds of forage. You got to do some calculation for moisture and dry matter and stuff like that. But gives you an idea. That way you kind of know what you took off, what you need to replace. That goes back into something I like to do in the winter is kind of look over my budgets as far as what I've spent on inputs and then start preparing for spring because it's coming. You may even be talking to your local suppliers about inputs. If you got some coming at the end of the year, you may have to need some cash to put into something to kind of help with your taxes, or you may be like me and need to be talking to your financial loan officer to figure out how to get the inputs next year. So, I mean, it just depends on what you got going, but now's the time to be prepping for that. And so that's kind of, I guess that kind of leads together, as in, like I said earlier, in part of the show or whatever, you're always preparing for winter. Even though it's wintertime, you're still preparing for the next winter.
It's funny as cattlemen and cattlewomen. It's pretty funny how you're always looking forward. Like it's not now. We're not, what we're doing now. We plan for, like you said, last winter, the spring, this summer, and what we're going to be doing next winter is what we're planning now for the spring, for the summer. So you're always looking ahead at what's to come, and you know it's fun to do that because you can, put a plan in place and implement it, as everybody always says on here. Make a plan, have a plan. When it goes into this too, because if you don't, I mean, just my opinion, and I know there's strong opinions whether you feed your cows or you don't. Grain supplement, it's fine. Whatever you like to do is what you do. I'm just gonna tell you, especially in the wintertime, we feed ours because I think the better shape that they are going into winter, the better shape they're going to be coming out. Because generally in Western North Carolina, where we're at here, we don't get those just bone chill. I mean, it gets cold, but we don't get really rough winters. Every once in a while, we'll get that, but for the most part, it's like I say, it's cold, it's humid, even in the winter, and that don't help. But I think I guess my advice is the better shape your cows are in before winter starts, spring or summer, fall, late summer into fall. I think that's going to carry over into the winter, and it's just going to make them healthier coming back out of winter. Because let's face it, when we get into, I don't care where you're at, and maybe in South Texas it probably doesn't. I know South Georgia doesn't ever really get just real cold, and they kind of keep some grass, but January, February, even March around here is your coldest months, and it gets tough. I mean, they're eating, all they're doing is standing around the hay feeder all day and all night. And so the quality of forage is very important, but I think it's equally as important to have them in the best shape that you can have them in before winter starts.
And I talk about that a little bit because, like, kind of the way I see it is, we talk about having them in good shape or all that. So, supplementing or not supplementing, well, I can really only go by my experience, with producers in the area and ourselves. But like, and you can have good doing cows, but if you feed them 7% protein hay that's got a TDN of 50%, I don't care how good your cows are going to do. They're not getting what they need. They can't physically eat enough hay to cover their requirements. So you have to supplement. So look at it as an individual program, kind of going back to what you mentioned about the breeding earlier in the fall. Well, there's a lot of advantages to that, but one, having calves in August, September, sometimes, especially on the bulls, they fit better in bull cells for a spring deal or something like that, or older in the fall. So I mean, that time of year works pretty good for a lot of sales as a seed stock provider, but also kind of going back to what you were talking about your cows being in better shape. Well, at that time of year, they tend to have had grass. They tend to be better shape. So if they calve, then like you mentioned, you may see a benefit of them calving or breeding back easier. So that's something to think about. If you're like I have been in the past and still am sometimes, I enjoy calving that time of year because it tends to be drier, things like that. Yeah, there's some heat issues, but hey, we got Beefmaster cows. I mean, let's go, right?
That's right.
But so that's one of their advantages. But also calving that time of year, if I know I have a forage base that's going to be fed to them in the winter that's not up to snuff, I don't need to be calving in November because guess what? When they start trying to beat back in January, I'm feeding them hay that's not good enough for their requirements. So guess what's going to happen? They're going to have a hard time getting bred back. I mean, there's good fertile cows out there that can do things that's amazing, but also just like a person, if you starve it to death, even though you're feeding it, I mean, it's hard to perform. You don't professional athletes don't sit around and eat just McDonald's all the time. They eat high calorie but health nutritious food. You know what I'm saying? So they can perform. So I mean, the same with the cattle. I'm not saying you just gotta at least meet the needs that scientifically shown that it's what they gotta have. Is what I'm saying. I guess I'm trying to go off in the weeds, but if you're someone like I am that has not as much control over my forage base for the winter, I have to buy quite a bit of hay or produce hay that's not necessarily that great. If you're having trouble with cattle breeding late in the fall, early winter, maybe it's time to shift them sooner or flip to the spring. So that's some winter prep that you can think about as well. Kind of evaluate that, and have you been having trouble with that? It's something that I run by my commercial producers a lot. You could have a really good set of cows, but if you can't meet their nutritional needs at the time of the year that you need them to perform, you're going to have a mess.
Yeah.
So
Very well said. Very well said. And it's the little things, like we always say, the little things. I don't remember who said it. No, it wasn't long ago. The little things turn into big things. And if you're,
I think Bruce said that, didn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
And you put all your little things together and your big things just kind of come together. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. I mean, you may be sitting at home listening to this and go, man, I know all this. You don't have to tell me that. But hopefully somebody out there will get something out of, kind of what we do and kind of our protocols and how we handle things. But I mean, we supplement. I'll be honest with you. I've not tested our hay. I need to, but I don't. I have not.
Well, I mean, there's simple ways to kind of look at the cows. They're not getting the right, like even the manure test or whatever. You can look it up on a chart. They've got these charts online. You look them up. Some people are probably one thing, what in the world are you talking about? But the manure, the way the manure stacks has a sign of how much protein's in the hay or the nutritional value. If it's a good flat patty with a little circle in the middle, that's about ideal. If it's stacking up, say like a horse, in balls or stacking up pretty tall, you don't have enough protein in there to keep it a little looser. So I challenge some of those folks that haven't tested their hay, don't want to test their hay, to use that as a guide to say, well, is my cows getting enough of what they need? I guess to compare it, have you ever seen in the spring, how cows get? They get on that fresh grass and it just kind of goes through them real fast,
Yes.
where they're probably getting too much moisture and too much protein. But as they get later in the spring, and they get on more of a mixed grass or something, he kind of planes out and levels off. So, I mean, that's kind of something to go by. If you've ever fed good hay and really bad hay before, you'll notice the difference because, for one, the cows don't want to eat the bad hay if they've, you know, been exposed to the good hay. And then you can see the difference in the manure pretty quick within a few days.
They get like
So
us, they get spoiled.
they get spoiled. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's something that you could do without testing your hay to give you an idea. You know, it would be hard to say, well, how much do I need to supplement, et cetera, et cetera. But at least it would give you a good rule of thumb. So I hope some of these folks, especially your readers that haven't thought about this, look up the manure chart on online. You pull it up, there's actually a chart for that. It goes from like 1 to 5 or something like that, how the paddy stacks. So
And that's like right now, you're talking about it running through them. Anybody that's got acorns in their pasture, it'll absolutely run through cows. And I know there's not the best for a cow. I know it's poisonous to horses, but I mean, there's
well,
nothing.
it's poisonous to cattle. Uh, you know, really, cows tend to handle it better because they have a better digestive tract or when more mature. Where you get into trouble a lot of times with the acorns is with the calves. So, like if you've got 300 weight calves or 5 weight calves or whatever, and they get into them, they could actually go into kidney failure.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's something to think about. We talk about winter prep. Obviously, acorns fall in the fall and winter. So
Just keep a close eye.
yeah, keep a close eye. The main thing would be, some cattle like them, so they eat them regardless. But you know, make sure there's plenty of forage. If you do have acorns and they run short on forage, they'll go eat those acorns,
Yep.
and they'll get on them pretty hard. I mean, we've not had much trouble just because of the way our farms lay out. We don't have too many acorns, but just last week, I was talking to the guy at the sale barn that manages there. He had some calves come in that they felt like was on acres. And they actually asked the person, they said, "Oh yeah, yeah," and they said, "Well, you might want to do something. You're just gonna have some trouble." So
Yeah.
but it is toxic to cattle. Typically, it can be a problem for all classes of cattle, but for calves, it can definitely be detrimental.
Well,
There's
I'll
really
echo,
once they go into kidney failure, there's really nothing you can do. Uh, but
but hang on, brother Ride. I mean,
yeah,
it's again, it's little things like that that somebody may not have known. I mean, those type of trees are generally huge, and you're not just going to cut those down. So you just got to watch,
mm-hmm.
that they're not one like a little pine tree where you can just go cut it down and get it gone or something, or a cherry tree that you can get it cut and get it out of there. Generally those trees are absolutely massive.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
and it's going to fluctuate year to year. Most people were dry this year, so acres may not be a big issue anyway. But some years when there's a whole bunch, they can be an issue for sure.
and I'm gonna echo what my vet has told me, because I obviously after the hurricane come through, we had some trees down and ended up having to cut some, and some fell, that necessarily wouldn't have otherwise, and trying to figure out what we needed to get out of the pasture right away or what they could kind of be around. And he said, look, even if it's poisonous to them, he said, here's the thing. The cows are not gonna go eat that if they've got better forage to eat. They're not gonna go search that out. They're gonna actually stay away from it if they've got enough forage and enough quality forage to eat. He said, now when you run into that is when they get hungry and they don't have nothing to eat, then they're going to go eat whatever they can eat. But so that kind of goes into what we're talking about tonight, and um, keeping your forages good and keeping your grass as long as you can, whether it be rotational grazing or whatever you do, whatever your practice is. There's not a right or wrong. It's just whatever works for you.
That's kind of you brought that up about the poisonous plants. I don't know how we're getting off on this, but it's kind of the same thing because in the fall, that's typically when you see the most cattle get poisoned by plants. So, like in our area, it could be in some areas that people are listening. Perilla mint is really a big issue around here in the fall, particularly in years like this where it's drought. They run out of forage, and then that plant's blooming, and they go eat it because they're looking for forage. Typically, it grows all over the place in the tree lines, but they hardly ever mess with it because they usually got plenty to eat. But when it gets dry and it gets kind of wilted, it'll be palatable to them, and they'll eat it. And it's always never fails. I'll have somebody call every end of August, 1st of September in a dry year, and like, oh, I got dead cows. What's going on? And it's usually my first thought is check to see if you have Perella pent, and most of the time that's what it is.
Well, we don't have a ton of it over here, but I know there is some, but no, you're right. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, if you want to, I mean, if you really want to, and we won't go into that because I know we're about done for the night, but if you Google plants that are toxic to animals, you will want to get rid of every piece of forage in your pasture because it seems like everything is toxic of some sort. Of the grass, obviously, but by every weed, every tree, there's some kind of toxicity to it. And it's crazy.
Right. Yeah, it depends on what kind of toxicity it is, acute toxicity or different things like that. But another one to look at, since it is, time for the first frost for a lot of folks, you take like Johnson grass or millet or Sudan grass or something like that, when that stuff gets killed all of a sudden by like a frost, well, it makes pretty much the same as cyanide in that plant. So you're gonna need to wait 7 to 10 days before you let them graze that. So that's something to be watching out for this time of year too, especially if you like some folks, you have hay fields that you graze in the fall if you don't need to cut the hay again. Johnson grass tends to like those areas, or if you've got some type of summer forage or annual you put out there to graze, be careful of that. As soon as the frost is done, it's killed it off, give it about 10 days, and typically you'll be okay to go back out there and graze that, but definitely wait for a good killing frost. You don't want one of those that's like kind of in between where some of it dies and some of it don't. You kind of be asking for a disaster there, but something to think about.
Wonder how many people we just stressed out.
Well, ain't nothing to be stressed. Ain't nothing to be stressed over. I typically like to say if you want to graze those forages, be watching the weather, and if it looks like it's going to be a couple of weeks before a frost, go in there and just go ahead and let them mow it down. And then take them back somewhere else for the time when it time for it to happen.
Well, and all we're saying is, I feel like all we're saying here is, look, just keep an eye on it. You're going to look at your cows anyways. Keep an eye on it and make sure their forage is good. Because if they've got good forage, they're not going to go eat your poisonous plants.
Yeah.
So anyway, normally.
Somehow we got from winter prep to poisonous plants, but that was pretty cool.
We just followed the rabbit hole.
Yeah, we're true podcasters at this point.
I told you, we're just winging it tonight.
Yeah.
But it worked out. I think it was a good episode. I'm sure we missed something. And if we did, please let us know. Or if there's something different you do that you feel is important, let us know. We'll talk about it. But anyways, we made it through it.
About bedtime, ain't it?
I think so. We're gonna get off here and we'll move on to the next one. But hopefully everybody takes something out of this. It was fun to talk about something that we just hadn't even thought about talking about until today. So I was kind of glad. His computer going out was probably a blessing in disguise. Somebody might not need to hear some of this. So
that's right. You never know.
But Anyways, we're gonna button it up for the night, and we'll see everybody on the next episode.
See ya.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to the Beefmaster Banner podcast. Please know that we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. Just search Beefmaster Banner. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We love hearing from you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.